We're going to dive deeper into the energy market right now on a day that saw oil prices jump more than 3% after last night's airstrike. Crude now trading at its highest levels since April. Joining us now is our friend Helima Croft, Global Head of Commodity Strategy at RBC Capital Markets and a CNBC contributor. Helima, what are your thoughts today as you watched the markets unfold after last night's events?
I mean, I think it's hard to overstate how momentous the killing of Qasem Soleimani was. I mean, he was the most powerful operative in the Middle East. You could argue the second most powerful figure in Iran. I mean, I think what we're really looking at is, the prospect of significant Iranian retaliation. Now, some people have said, well, they have to put up or shut up. But frankly, since May, we have seen almost unprecedented attacks on energy infrastructure in the Middle East. Tankers being struck off of UAE's territorial waters in May, tankers seized over the summer. And then on September 14th, Iranians were basically sent cruise missiles and drones and took out half of Saudi's oil production temporarily. So I don't think we should be complacent about Iran's ability to respond and be chaotic in the region. And so I think what the market is doing right now is waiting to see, what they bring forward in terms of additional attacks and whether we can sort of weather a disruption storm.
But the U.S. administration has moved as well from, complacency is not the right word for it. Right. But the U.S. was pretty patient in the face of all of those provocations. And now maybe there is a new phase and a seismic shift where the president and the administration is saying enough already. We're not going to take this anymore. And so if Iran comes back with some further provocation, we may punch back twice as hard.
And I think that is the issue about a retaliatory spiral. President Trump has drawn a red line. He's drawn this red line over the summer. He's not going to use U.S. military assets to protect Persian Gulf energy infrastructure. He says that is crude going to Asia. We have supply in the U.S. But his red line is no Americans can be killed by Iran or Iranian-backed groups. And he enforced that red line. You had a U.S. civilian contractor killed on a base in Iraq on Friday, and he has responded with force to that. So if the Iranians retaliate in a way that targets more Americans, you can expect the U.S. military to respond potentially on targets inside Iran. So again, I don't think we are done with this. I don't think this is a blip or a momentary issue. I think we are looking at the prospect of further back and forth between the U.S. and Iran over coming months.
So who's got a question for Helima? Go ahead.
So Helima, when you talk about how momentous of a killing this was for the United States or what a loss it was for Iran, does it make them change their strategy? Is it that type of a tipping point, or is it more or less it just ratchets up all the leverage that they have on us or we have on them?
I mean, I don't believe the supreme leader of Iran is going to back down in the face of this. He is vowing revenge. And I do think that, again, it may not be tomorrow, it may not be the next day, but over the coming weeks, we will see some type of significant Iranian response. And so the question is, does this lead us back to the bargaining table? I don't think we're anywhere near getting back to the bargaining table. And someone on your panel talked about North Korea, and an issue no one is really talking about is, what does Iran do with their nuclear program? They have been restarting enrichment of uranium in facilities that are heavily fortified over the summer. The question is now, do they potentially withdraw from the Non-Proliferation Treaty and make a quick dash to having nuclear weapons capability? Do they go the North Korea route? And so I do think that the risk is really high that we are going to see further escalation in this standoff between the U.S. and Iran. I do not think the Iranians are going to back down after what happened yesterday.
Kristina or Guy? Who had a question?
Kristina. Helima, bottom line, where do oil prices go?
Well, again, I think what has been interesting is, again, we have had unprecedented attacks on Middle East energy infrastructure. But because of concerns about the trade war, because of concerns about global demand, that did not really move the needle in terms of the market. Now, with trade war fears receding, I do think geopolitics can exert much more of an impact on the market. Yes, there is a U.S. supply story. So perhaps $80 Brent is the new 100. But that does not mean that we cannot go higher on the back of what I think is going to be further escalation in the coming weeks and months.
All right, Helima, thanks very much for your insights tonight. As always, we appreciate your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, let's trade what Helima just said and our thoughts about oil. Carter, is there a trade here for you?
I think the key is what oil did in relation to what it did after the missile strike, right? On that day, it was Monday, September 16th, it spiked as high as 63.38. And then it went almost back to 50, gave the whole thing back. Now we have been deliberately and very measuredly moving higher. And today we spiked to that high of September 16th and actually made a slight new high at 64 and change. This, in principle, is a move to a prior high, which is a setup for ultimately a breakout well into the 70s.
What do you think?
So for me, there was a couple of names, a few names that I had mentioned. XEC is one of the names, WPX Energy, and RIG. These are all names that have been up recently pretty big, and it could be M&A, it could be energy just laggard trying to become a leader, but I think that's the beta in the names in the energy space if this progresses any further.
Quickly, we've talked about Schlumberger now for a while. Basically, since October, when it made that double bottom around $30, the stock is up 33% or so in the last 4 months, and I think it can go higher from here. They report on January 17th. I think a lot of analysts will start playing catch-up. I'm not suggesting you hold it post-earnings, but I think this is a stock you can continue to own into earnings. Look for the April high, which I think was around $47. I think that's where it's headed.
Who was it last night? You remember we did that contrarian segment last night? You guys weren't here, obviously, but you were. Who said the idea that energy going from laggard to leader was
I said short term you could have a trade, but it's not going to last.
But it's a trade, but it's not going to last.
It's a trade, it's not going to last. And I think the most important thing for me is going to see, we already heard from China today that they're looking at what's going on with a real a specific eye on it regarding trade. I want to hear from Russia because we've seen in the last couple of weeks, we've seen those joint military operations between China, Iran, and Russia. I think they're having another one tonight or tomorrow night. So that's going to be really interesting to me to see how much bigger this is allowed to get.